Okay, many of y'all know that I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I still do in an actual digital form here in a new game. It's called Neverwinter, and it's a protected town that apparently never has winter, and that, like a lot of things, keeps showing up and slapping me in the face with reality of truth of history. Because one of my ancient videos was called Always Summer, and so we named our guild here that for a while. But Always Summer is the area that through the Ice Age the people lived in, because the ice cap was encapsulated on the top and on the south, and therefore there was a firmament above and a firmament below, and only a certain area. And this has been changed into a glass dome over the earth, and made into different conjecture that is in your Bible. Bible talks about a firmament, of course, but it's talking about a glass dome, and stars are merely bubbles in that. And the sun and the moon are inside of that, and all these ancient things that people used to believe. Well, I'm in that land of ancient beliefs here. All this is a more modern, weird town here. This is basically the land that time forgot, right here. Okay. And I've got a magic carpet here that I've gotten recently, so let's check this out. I just want to show you one thing, and then we'll lead to another, because what we're talking about here is dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons kind of helps with that. A guy just went by on a drake. I have one of those myself, and I'll get one here shortly. Let me take a hop, skip, and a jump down here and see if this dragon is still active. Huh, no giant scorpions there. Sometimes there are. Anyhow, so it's a 3D game, and you fight and do things. And if I avoid these enough, there's some velociraptors right there that I can fight. Oh, what the hell? Let me show you me fighting them here. You want to? Let me just go ahead and take out a couple of these guys. What are you standing over here for? And of course, they drop things and, change coins. Oh, a black pearl. That helps you refine stuff. And lock boxes that you can open by paying money or building up Zen, which is a game currency. And you can get into building up certain weapon enchantments and things along that line. Well, the King of Spines was here, but he's not. But you can see the velociraptors that are over there on the other side. And I swear I just saw him, so he must have disappeared off of a timer right when we came up, as it showed his thing there. They're already spawned back in where they were. But so, dinosaurs. And you can imagine how people back not long ago didn't understand or know what dinosaurs were. And the farther you go back, the worse our ideas were of what these things were, that have these lizard-like appearance, and they're huge. And of course, you could see those and make up some strange ideas. I'm not going to wander all around here, though, although it is a beautiful area. Let me just take a portal, and we'll go to a place known as the Well of Dragons. So I want to focus on dragons. And we also want to talk about perhaps Tiamat. And she is the Queen of Dragons, which is here in the Well of Dragons. And you can see that dragon skull right there. But so here we are. Hopefully there's a dragon fight going on. Oh, it looks like dragons are up. I wonder what instance I'm actually in here, because these dragons are up. Am I in one? I'm in number 1. I wonder if they're actually doing them. They'd be starting at green. There's a way that you run them around here. Anyhow, this is a place called Well of Dragons. It's where they got a bunch of dragon bones, and they're bringing back to life ancient dragons. And at each one of those points there and right up here are dragons. Memory serves me correctly, this is a red dragon. It's here. right? We're not going to solo try to fight him. These are little drakes. They're all over the place up here. Apparently they're not doing the dragons, although I don't see the green beam. Yep, there it is. So it starts usually here at this green dragon and rolls all the way around through the whole place. If I get close to any of these guys, they're going to start attacking me. But here's this green dragon. Now, Tiamat is a giant dragon. Tiamat wouldn't even really fit in this area. Got a guy chasing me. Let me walk as I show you this. Is a dragon, wouldn't even fit in that area there. Tiamat is a 5-headed dragon, which is giant. And you see this skull right here and the size of the dragon that was there. And this is one of Tiamat's children that died. And Tiamat's gone back inside the earth. And she lives in a magma chamber or a volcano right up there with a temple built into it. Okay? And so these people here, these bad guys, are trying to get all these bones, and they're getting all these carts. And I'm trying to keep them from it. That's the current little gist that's in here. And you can see all these giant dragon bones around. So just a thought here, if you were to find ancient bones, and you look at these, and of course they kind of look like femurs and stuff, and you know what a human femur looks like, you would say that there were giants in the land in those days, right? That's one way that that's shown to have been a thought of early men, early people, right? These dragon bones that they would find. And of course, they're giant then. If that's the bones of these lizard things, well, they find the skull. And what's the skull look like? Well, the skull, oh wow, this thing wasn't a man. This was a giant lizard with teeth. Now we can start making up things about him, like, oh, he can breathe fire, or spit acid, or do all kinds of neat stuff. Maybe he can even fly, right? Now this is old cavemen thinking about these thoughts, and out of this comes a conjecture that's found in the Sumerians, and it's where they had a belief that 2 giant dragons had gotten into a fight, and that this created the universe, and it ripples 3 times. Okay, so what happens is they created the Milky Way in the universe, and Tiamat and Bahamut got into a fight. Bahamut's the king of red dragons. Tiamat is a 5-headed dragon, and she has 5 different heads on her. Man, I want to try to cue into one of these Tiamats, but I'm just positive I'm not going to be able to get into one this time of night. And people aren't really here so much as they used to be a lot. Rise of Tiamat. We'll wait in the queue here for a minute and just see if it shows up. But so I'm giving you a few ideas here off of, well, Tiamat's a 5-headed dragon. Now, around everywhere there are red dragons, and which is a fire dragon. They're all associated with a certain color with a certain thing, and that's for certain other reasons. Looks like people are actually fighting this one here. Oh heck, let me get in on it. Watch his health start diminishing now. Yeah, doing some damage to him. Anyhow, so she's a 5-headed dragon, and so she spawned all of the other dragons. Okay, and so what does that lead to? Well, apparently she's like the mother of all dragons, and if you look, she has one of each color of heads. Ooh, there's Tiamat. We will go to Tiamat if it allows us. It's a 25-man raid. Right now we have a few doing this guy, and I'll keep, woo. When that big red spot comes up, it's going to be a big attack. That was her wing attack. Not that big of a deal. This one has a necrotic damage. The black dragon is, of course, a dragon of death, right? 24 or 25. If we can get another person going in here, we'll have it. So there's nobody buffing me at all, and apparently these guys are fairly low level. They're not doing much. Let me just take out this group right here that is really annoying the rest of us. They're gone. 24 or 25, and it's not queuing, but it will queue here in a second. And so I want to show you this 5-headed dragon. I think this is more a neat way of showing you than perhaps looking at pictures and things. And of course, this is a time of bows and arrows, but then there is magic. It's the only thing that's really going to help you. Okay, it just took me right out of that. Now we're going to go into Tiamat and her fight in her magma chamber here that actually lays out like a skull and a hand here. Show what it looks like. It looks like a skull. We're about to fight all these. I am going to go and attack the blue dragon. Used to be you line up at each one of these heads, right? And it has like 5 minutes here to queue up. But now, as soon as 25 people are in, it goes ahead and queues and goes. I'm going to fight the blue dragon head that's over here. This is just her head starting to come up. And at first, we're actually fighting their bad priests and getting rid of them. I'm going to make the jump across here. Yep. Let's get a little bleed going on this guy. Yeah, I'm soloing him out here. Here comes another guy. Okay, run out of here. And hopefully they're doing the other heads while I'm doing this. I can get back on my mount as soon as I get far enough away from bad guys. Which again, the magic carpet, I ought to turn on the Drake. So here comes Severn, which is their major guy. Wham, and he's gone. And I got pushed off by him. There's always somebody. And it was me. So now we have to protect the heads, but if you'll look, here we have a 5-headed dragon. There's a red-headed, there's a blue-headed. The blue's doing lightning right now. There's green, there's a black, and there's a white head that's on there, right? Now what we're doing is protecting our priests, which are trying to debuff or cause it to where we can do enough damage. In other words, if we go to fight her right now, and they don't have their de-arming charms going on, we're just going to get destroyed. And there's no question about it. So we have to let this priest build up this giant ritual. And she is summoning up people out of a crack in front of us right there of the depths of the earth. Well, here comes the frost attack. Anybody caught in that will just freeze solid and be stone. Like this guy right here, just stuck. Okay. It goes away in a few seconds, but in between then you can just get attacked just blatantly. And if you try to go across it, you'll just slide. I'm doing skip attacks to make it not do it, but okay, so anyhow, this 5-headed dragon here, each one has a head. Well, this relates back to Samaria, and Samaria had 5 major cities for a while. It ended up becoming 7, but had 5 major cities. Now each one was going for a different deity. And of course this is looking back at Babylon, and Babylon is a land of dragons. If you look at the entrance gates that they had from primordial time, they show you a dragon. You know, they'll show you a lion and a few other characters there, and then they show you dragons. Here, I froze myself. But let me go, because now that all those bars are full up top, we get to attack each one of the heads. Now the way this works is if you don't kill the head all the way down, it'll grow back at least 30% of its head, if not 50. So you want to leave them at that, or for a real strong team, we'll take them all the way to 0 and try to make it all in one shot. And we're a real strong team, and so we're going to take it all in one shot. And wait for somebody to throw down the buff. There. Wham. Put a bleed on him for everybody. And he's gone, really. Let's turn. I could jump down, but it lags with all these people coming out of it. Got burned to hair, but not bad. Anyhow, so now we're on the red head. Well, and I tell you, we're probably going to kill it all in one shot here. We've got a little bit more than a minute left. If you see the timer there up top, I'm going to put a bleed on him and walk. There we go. Let's go to blue. So you can see it's kind of a coordinated effort. Although we all seem to die right there. We got picked up by somebody that had a scroll. And they kind of cleric resurrected us. We only have 30 seconds left, and I'm starting to doubt if we're going to make it. Jump across. Made it. Somebody better throw that out and not let us get frozen. If we get frozen, yeah, we're not going to do enough damage. I doubt we'll make it. Anyhow, so that's the white head, and it's frost. Each one of these heads, ooh, let's see, 10 seconds, and a bleed. Oh, and I at least got the bleed on it, and we did it. Okay. And so he falls, or she falls back into the magma and goes back into the hell when she came. I don't know how I placed in this. I was talking, so probably not paying attention too well. I came in second place. Anyhow, so do a little prayer there. And a couple of things that dropped, and then there's a treasure chest for a winner. You don't get nothing if you lose. It shows you how you kicked out, and then it has Mithra come in and take back time and make it before it ever happened, so it never happened, and then you get a chance to do it again. Otherwise, how could you play the game, right? But anyhow, and it's neat that they bring in Mithra. So let's look at these heads on this dragon here real quick. I'm going to just ditch this. So here we are looking at Tiamat, or at least 3 heads of Tiamat. There are 2 more. And of course, we know about the ancient stories about Hydra and things like that, where if you cut off a head, it regrows, right? We didn't have a chance to do it right there, although it almost happened. We only had a few seconds left. If we would have not completed it, then all of the heads would have come back up to about 35%, and they would have all been back alive again. And you have to do it like that. In fact, whenever people aren't as strong, we're so overpowered in the game. This was what happened before. That before, what we had to do was fight like the first 3 and leave them at like 25-30%. Well, down to about 15 really. But if you went any lower than that, it'd pop it all the way back up. So you didn't try to push the issue. You had to leave each one at that. You only got to about the red head or the middle one. You got the first 2 or 3 done. Then you went and fought again at the priest and had him charge up again. Then you would go from the red head in the middle all the way to the right again and get those done. Then you'd come back and have to do the priests again. Then you'd start on the left where we did just then and wipe them all out in one shot. Well, why? Because they would regrow. Well, what has all this mythology got to do with any of this, and what does this dragon thing have to do with anything? Well, it has a lot to do with things. Dragons, of course, were mythological creatures, but then again, they were attached to people, and they were attached to stellar events and things. Comets were dragons, and indeed I've got one that's about Chinese dragons and so on, but let's look at this, that Godzilla, which really would be like a T-Rex or really an Allosaurus with the back blades on him, but now he's originally was 35 foot tall, then he was 45, then he was 60. Now he's all of a sudden just huge, skyscraper tall. And of course, things grow over time. Mythologies grow over time. Now, he's a water dragon, and he causes a giant typhoon, right, to come in, and or a tsunami to come in, right? And by the same course, in the biblical tale, there's Leviathan that causes a great tsunami. That's a creature of the ocean that they kill off. But I can indeed show you that by that time, they're really just talking about a crocodile. I've got a vid I'll show you onto it where I just go straight out of the Bible, and then I'm showing you a picture of a crocodile. but you can see these fire-breathing dragons, and it'll show you how it connects to it. So I want you to kind of remember this when we talk about that, but what this has to do with everything. Now, the different colored of heads, so what we have are different heads, and they can mean different cities, right? So in the Sumerians, there was the death god of Nergal. He was the god of when people died, right? And there was the air god that would have been, the frost god or the air god here. Um, and there's a fire god, right? There's a green water god. Green water god's going to be Enki. Air god's going to be Enlil, right? So it keeps on there. Utu, the sun god, is the one that cooks everything and dries it out. This is the sun god, right? And so it's the heads of Sumer that are the head of Babylon itself, because it's one creature, right? But yet it doesn't quite have unity, and if you take out each head, you can overpower the beast, right? Just as we ended up doing so there. There are times whenever you would do this fight that I just talked about, and one group would go left, one would go right, they meet in the middle, and then on the second round, they're all down to low, and then you go and fight it too. That only happened for a short while, and then we got overpowered enough to really be able to wipe it out in one round. The problem is right after that, everybody thought that we were powered like that. They'd come in and try to one round it, and you couldn't do it. Then they'd start going from right to left, left to right, and get it all messed up, and sometimes not even complete the whole thing out of just stupidity, thinking that they were that one time. Well, there was one time in certain civilizations that really meant a whole lot and that changed humanity. In fact, from things like this, it can show you that humanity changed from that. And I'm trying to show that to you. So this idea of a dragon, this Tiamat, later in the Marduk idea, was taken to be more of 5 people. 5 groups, right? And you can see sometimes different visions are shown by them. Quite often your frost god, which makes sense, has blue eyes, and then again you think about the Nordics and they have blue eyes, right? This, of course, would be an equatorial god and the sun worshippers, who worships death. That's the Egyptians. In fact, they spend more readying themselves for death. In fact, our modern day society really seems to live on the idea of trying to protect themselves from sin, so that whenever we do die, we can go correctly. They had the same idea to weigh the feather of Ma'at. Well, Tia, or Ki, is the earth, right? And Tiamat ran into earth, and Tia and Ki became one. And we, believe it or not, still have this as the scientific theory of how the earth is formed, that it took 2 things running into each other, and then that other goddess of a water goddess, which is seen in Sumerians as being Apsu, that Enki controlled and therefore became the water god, though at that time he was the king of the world. It said that he caused earthquakes and did things like this, and changed the seasons, and did just a myriad of things for people, brought the plow, all kinds of things. But at the same time, he killed Apsu and or Tiamat, which in the first vision is Tihoma, and there's an original vision of the cosmic dragon having fought with Bahamut. Tiamat and Bahamut get into a fight. Tiamat and Bahamut, in their fight, run into Ki. This is shown in the Sumerians as being a unwanted guest at a dinner party where they describe the planets as the gods, and then this unwanted queen from another land steps in and spills a drink upon Ki. In turn, it causes a fight between their bodyguards. Kingu gets killed, and his head falls pale, forever facing Ki. Now, later, they tell you that they become one. It almost makes no sense that she takes on dual aspects. Well, I'll get to that too. if I can fit it all in this video. Let's change the picture for a second, though, and give you a different perspective here. Just to flip through a few of them. Ancient dragons. There's a lot of pictures you'll see. If you look up Tiamat, you're going to see a 5-headed dragon. It's going to be, different colors and so on. I did not want to go to Amazon. Of course not. But even when you look at these Rise of Tiamat adventures, it shows you all these sea adventures and a lot of things. And Tiamat is associated with Leviathan. Leviathan's an ancient water goddess that controls the ocean, right? Now, the oddity inside of that, I guess, is going to be that we look at the 5 heads that we were talking about, and when you separate them to different people, you end up left with a goddess form, and this is going to be Venus, or should I better say Inanna, and that Inanna was a goddess of love, grain, and plenty, and then turned into a goddess of war, right? This is the way Diana, or Venus, is depicted. She's a duality god. Not to get too touchy, but women can definitely have a mean side to them. Don't hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I don't know how many times we've heard, you don't want to piss her off. You can imagine if queens were in power, how that could go real bad. England has very much been the epitome of composure, I would say, in the face of history and the way things could have gone, whether it be male or female, in any way, shape, or form in that position. So, kudos, but I think we've ascended to another place here. We've become a different people totally than the time that we're looking back at and haven't realized it, because we're a people that somehow has amnesia towards the effect of where all this comes from. And there are people who live their daily lives and it seems to mean nothing to them whatsoever, and how ancient history evolved into the way it is. There are other people that are definitely seeking truth and wanting to know where it really all did come from, what is the actual facts, what is reality, because so many people say so many things. And so we can get a different look at it, I guess. Let me just look at Tiamat here again. Now, Tiamat, Tia, is well, let's hit wiki for a silly here. Tiamat was known in all these areas. It's an ancient mythos. You can see it pulled all the way through. And I've told you how I have ancient connections that connect Egyptian gods to Greek gods, and Roman gods, of course, and Greek gods connect. Then you have your Sumerians and stuff. People don't think they connect. That actually has fibers that connect over to India, and in fact into the Middle East, where you can still see this idea of this water serpent, primordial goddess of chaos that creates everything, right? And so there's 3 envisions of that. Let me get to this real quick because it probably won't go into it anyway in here. So the original one is basically where she creates the universe, and now what's left is strewn out into and makes up the asteroid belt and the Milky Way, right? And then that's the mother of what created us. And so there's an ancient belief in that. And this goes with snake worship, okay? Because snakes are serpents. They're like the dragons. They're kind of like the small versions you see today of like these dragon head kind of things. And They have to be respected. They can bite you and kill you, right? It's poison, even though it's a little snake. So there's depictions you see where even it seemed to have been lost to the original concept, but still shown here, where there's a snake that looks like an anaconda, perhaps, and it's so big these people can walk on its back. Not shown to scale here, but it has front legs. It has horns on its head, right? And a strange mouth that's onto it. And again, what we have here killing this is this god with lightning. Now, these are the lightning bolts that I've shown you that Zeus has, that lightning bolts that, and indeed, when you ignite plasma, it looks like this. So people have made a lot of conjecture out of that that I can't quite go with, yet here it is, where you see this, and the god Ninurta has this same scepter. The goddess Shiva has this same scepter. And again, I showed you where Greeks have this same concept. The god Baal has this same lightning bolt, which looks like this triforked, but going both ways, not just one way, like is on the trident of Neptune or Poseidon or Enki's trident. And so it's a snake type worship that they have. Now, snakes were seen to where they can shed their skin and live again. And so they're somewhat seen as a resurrecting type thing. And it resurrects itself 3 times. It created the earth, and then it kills off the earth and lets it reform again. This was your great flood whenever a dragon from the sky or a comet comes and hits the earth and causes great tidal waves, like your Godzilla story and where that comes from, like Tiamat and Tihamu. In your Bible, it said in the original, they kept it in there but changed its meaning. In the very first of Genesis, it says, and the earth was tohu and bohu. And who is that? Well, tohu is, or Tihomu and Tihamat are your names of this original concept, and bohu is Bahamut. And it's in the Bible, it's meant to say, that the universe was null and void, and this was null and that was void, and whenever they clashed, it caused, and the face of God came over the waters. Now, water is Mary, right? Maritime, right? As in the mare or the sea. Oh, and I didn't show you that, but the map that they have there, they talk about it's the mare. They talk about a mare of the dead, and it's down south and so on. And of course, Egyptian, the land of the dead, and of course that comes from the idea of the underworld. And they already had an idea of the above the equator, where the equator or belly button of the earth was, and then south of the equator, equating to the idea of an underworld. But then that's taken into being like, oh, that must be hell, and all these things are brought out into hell. Tiamat, whenever we just banished her, she went back to hell, back to the 9 hells for whence she came. Well, there's a whole thing of the 9 hells too, and I'm not going to get into that, or I swear I'm not going to get into, you know, equating ancient religions and stuff and so on in this, but here we are doing it somehow. But then later, a secondary form of this is, of course, the planet being hit by the comet, and then your third form of it is whenever there's a giant takeover in Babylon and the falling of everything, right? Now, the fourth is supposed to be, and if you look into it, is Revelations, where there's this thing and this great dragon of old, and the whole situation goes on again. They say, because Babylon can't die, you have not cut the heads off and killed her. And so it rises again, and so on. And it's supposed to be this epic thing that they professed 2 times ago was going to be in effect, and then it happened, and then it's going to happen again. Well, what if one of these is like people conquering other people? The other concept of this is the world being conquered by a comet hitting it and ruining everybody. Okay? So things need to be taken into consideration, how you can develop that. And once you start putting persons on it and personal deities, and how this was that, and the ancient god Marduk did this, and you look at pictures of like Marduk, and here we are again with Marduk coming, and he has the same lightning symbol of the double trident here coming in doing his damage, right? And these tridents, they thunder the earth and they do these things and stuff, and you go, well, that's lightning and thunder and so on. But then the other trident that's associated with it says it does earthquakes. Dragons now live inside of the earth, right? Well, dragons live inside of the earth in these mythologies because dragons, of course, they breathe fire. And so they're in the earth breathing fire, and them getting pissed off causes earthquakes, and them getting pissed off and threshing about causes mountains to explode at the top and cause volcanoes. And so volcanoes are these dragons also, and they have this same idea and concept, much like you would see something like I've got another video coming up that relates the redheads with dragons, and I think I'll spoil it right now by showing you Typhon. Typhon is an ancient story that we have here from Greek and Roman literature. Greek, of course, before that, and you find that it's echoed again in the exact same story in Set of the Egyptians and Seti, and the Setiites and Sethites are known to be redheads. Seti is a redhead. Ramses and the ram, the Aries, the time of Aries. Aries is a ram. These Aryans have red hair. These ram people, okay? And if you look, he has red hair, kind of an elfin ears to him and so on. Here is Zeus, and he is throwing that lightning bolt that is, again, the double trident. And this one even looks just almost exactly like the one that's in Ninurta. And in one of my older videos, I show it in an actual Tibetan shrine that is up in the middle of the Himalayas. They have this exact effigy held up there, and you say, what is it? Well, it's the thing that they use for a lightning rod. It held immense power in elder days, and then they say that giants used to wield this thing. Okay, so there's your lightning connection and so on. So again, go back to Tiamat, and she's got 5 heads, and her 5 heads signify the 5 different people that are in control of running things. And in one statement, it is Babylon. In another statement, it's the known world, where you have a people like the Greeks who believed in Zeus, and the Baal worshippers who had a lightning god. Then you had people who had water gods, like the Phoenicians, who believed in Poseidon and Neptune, and people like Enki, who were relegated to being a water god of all the control of water. Water makes things grow, you know. Then you have people that are sun worshippers, as your fire god. You have ancient fire worshippers that lead all the way up to the time of Mithra, and people who believe in the sacred flame. Sacred flames are held even till now. JFK is born with an undying sacred flame. So you can still see some of the symbology now. And in fact, there's a lot of it with each one of these heads and what they do. You know, the frost giant head freezes. And so inside of this god that's inside of the earth, it's tumbling around, causes the earth to wiggle like it's caught inside the earth like an egg. And so one day it's going to burst forth again. I tell you, that's not reality. That's earthquakes. But reality is, if it happens, we're going to get hit by somebody else. And if they live through it, thousands of years from now, they might still contain some of this story and then tell you it was her son or her daughter to avenge all of this shit that had happened before when it cracked the earth. But it also can be seen as the 4 winds. Okay, so you end up having the north wind, or you have the wind of cold that goes on to them, and tragedies that can happen. So you have the north wind, You have the water tragedy can happen. You can have the earth destroyed by fire, and then you have the immortal rod of death. You can also see this in the four horsemen. Now, we're always leaving out the fifth head on this, and who is the fifth head? That is another probably video entirely, but again, in that video, I will definitely mention this in Dragons of Old and what that means. But just to seal this up with a couple of more little ancientology type things or whatever, people were known into dragons. In fact, here we go with Dracula and Dracul, and this is a dragon, and he was known to be a dragon or a great conqueror. And so, in some aspects, this idea of gigantes, of people that were giants in the earth in that day, one could be that there were giant creatures in the earth causing these rumblings in earth, right? Another concept could be that there were big men of big stature that controlled everything at one time. There were giant people. If I was to tell you that somebody is, Donald Trump is a giant in business or in real estate or whatever, then you wouldn't, think that I was telling you that he's like 9 foot tall, but he's big, that he's huge in that he's big in it. If I told you somebody was, big in football, if they're, a giant, man, he's a giant linebacker or whatever, you might think that he's big a little bit, but he wouldn't be that big if he was a giant of the sport, right? So the greats, if he's a great of the sport, things that are great can be big. Things that are, and indeed that word in Greek kind of means great. There were great people of well renown, right? But whenever I say he's a great football player, you don't go, oh wow, how tall was he? Do you? So this ties a few things together here too. And again, I'm going to get to this one about Typhon and Python, and how Typhon and Python are related somewhat, and how these primordial gods seem to control everything. And it involved colored hair too. We saw the red-haired guy here again, and again, there's a little theme going on here lately, showing you some of the actual beliefs and everything that went on, because Typhon was supposed to be the offspring of Kronos, and Kronos is a Phoenician, and that ends up being the god El that's in your Bible, that's worshipped in temples, and they had angels named Michael, Raphael, Ariel. Yeah, there was even prophets named Elijah. And of course, El is Saturn, and Saturn was worshipped by the Romans as their major deity that had taken over everything until his son Zeus, seen here, started to take over everything. And you can see how people believed in space gods and going to heaven, and then in a time of war and a time of poverty and a time of great drought, they started believing in a storm god because he brought the rain. And eventually people did silly things like throwing their children into volcanoes, like throwing their children into altars of Baal to try to appease some god so he might make it rain in great times of drought. Strange things happened through this belief, and then that belief is changed into another belief, and then that belief is changed into another belief, and then you have these ideas. And of course, one of these beliefs was just like, hey, it was a mixture, and it lives inside us all, right? Inside the earth, that spawned forth us. In fact, it was her that caused the creation that made us all happen. And so you deify that, but later you'll find other people that worship the other gods, and then they start hating those people for what they did, right? And so you can see these rips and almost being blamed on things. To this day, people like male gingers seem to get a bad rep, yet female gingers seem to be quite the thing. Isn't that odd? Because female gingers having male children are going to have male gingers. But at one time, they were gods. At one time, they were King David. At one time, they were ruddy people that controlled a large area. At one time, they were a large component of the Phoenicians. At one time, they were all across North Africa and became the Berbers and Amazigh that you still see with these traits today that are so strong. It's as strong as the Irish people, which also shows you where all this kind of goes to. But anyhow, there's a look there at Tiamat and dragons. We'll do another in-depth one about dragons, but then whenever we do, whenever I mention Tiamat, I won't go into depth because we've already covered it here. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Enjoy.